All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
It is Wednesday, a wonderful Wednesday on the Mark Thompson Show. I'm Mo Kelly in for Mark the rest of the week, including today. I hope your morning/afternoon has been wonderful. We have a huge show planned for you today. Of course, we're going to be joined by the inimitable John Rothmann at the bottom of the hour. I know he's going to be breathing fire. We have to talk about everything which is happening in Washington and beyond. Beyond, I'm talking about Venezuela. I'm talking about Miami. Yes, we're going to get into the Miami mayoral election last night, and it was huge, not only for the city of Miami, but for the Democratic Party. We'll tell you about that in just a moment. And Nancy Mace, Congresswoman Nancy Mace, she had an airport incident that was caught on camera, and we got to tell you about that. And that's running parallel to our transportation secretary, Sean Duffy, who for some reason wants to tell you and me what to wear when traveling. That's number one. And now more recently has said that he wants pull-up bars a la RFK Jr. in airports. So I guess they want to offer you a workout when you go to the airport. That and so much more. Do not forget, we need you to click like, subscribe, and share the Mark Thompson Show across all your socials, because only because of you can we do what we do. Now, we love all of you, but we just want you to show some of the love back in return. Let me say good morning/good afternoon to my cohorts and my co-conspirators, Tony Sorrentino, who I've known for many, many years and love dearly, a long time. Tony, it's good to see you. It's good to talk to you. And Kim McAllister. Kim, it's great to see you. You keep me on track. And, you know, if I go too far afield, just say, reel it back in, Mo. Reel it back in.
I thought you didn't need me. Tony didn't bring me up at the very beginning. So I thought, oh, no. What's happening? I'm hearing an echo, so I don't know what's going on, but, you know.
Hey, Tony, are you hearing an echo? I'm not hearing an echo.
I think I'm fine. I think
okay.
Good.
All right.
Well, let us know in the comments if something sounds amiss.
Okay.
Do you remember yesterday we started with Pete Hegseth?
Yes.
And we talked about how he would or would not get in any type of trouble domestically or international as far as war crimes with what's been going on off the coast of Venezuela. And I also said prior to that, having nothing to do with Pete Hegseth, President Trump, Donald Trump, wants this escalation off the coast of Venezuela. He wants it. He wants it part of his campaign strategy. And I do mean campaign. You would think, like, wait a minute, isn't he termed out? Is he running for a third term? I don't know if he'll live to see a third term, but he's acting as if he's moving towards a third term. He's out doing rallies, and we'll talk about that as well. But in his messaging, he is constantly referring to Venezuela. And now we can also find that there are other actions being taken, which are clearly an escalation, not on the part of Venezuela, not anything that Venezuela is doing, not anything that the Venezuelan president, Nicolas Maduro, is doing, but only the United States. And you might have seen the story where 2 U.S. fighter jets have been circling the Gulf of Venezuela since yesterday, which is a clear escalation and a clear line of demarcation as far as air superiority, and also the whole idea of where Venezuela's sovereignty begins and ends in these international waters. And the only reason you're doing that is because you are trying to provoke some sort of reaction from Venezuela, as if you want there to be some sort of crisis to justify further military intervention. Now, Kim, I don't know if I'm reading this wrong, but I think that we're on the path. We are steadily walking the path up to a military conflict over and beyond what we see with these boat strikes. And I would expect it to happen prior to Christmas as the Trump administration continues to deflect and distract from the Epstein files. Let's not forget grand jury testimony in both the Epstein files and also Ghislaine Maxwell are supposed to be coming out. Did I read that right, Kim?
Yeah, there are two judges in two different states that are saying it's okay to release the grand jury testimony on those cases.
So you know the Trump administration doesn't want to talk about the Epstein files. In fact, they've been slow walking, dragging their feet as far as the release, the discharge petition, which was voted on. And if you will, should just sample social media like I do, and I do it every single day, there is this continuing, consistent refrain that the Democrats are no longer talking about Epstein as if they moved on to something else, which couldn't be further from the truth. The truth is we're waiting for the Trump administration to do as legally prescribed and release all the information. Hopefully it will be unredacted. Hopefully it will be complete. Hopefully it will not necessarily try to hide various names attached. And I'm not even talking about just Donald Trump. I'm talking about anyone and everyone who has any level of association. And then we, the general public, can decide where culpability is, at least in the court of public opinion. So when you look at what's going on in Venezuela or off the coast of Venezuela right now, know that there is a steady beat and a consistent escalation leading towards some sort of military intervention or interdiction. I don't even know which word you should use in this case, where we are going to take Venezuela head on under the pretense and pretext of stopping drugs flowing into this country. And this is something which I've not heard about. If we are going to do this with Venezuela, and we're going to bomb boats indiscriminately off the coast of Venezuela, then what does that mean for our future relationship with Mexico? Honestly, what does it mean for our relationship with Canada? And I haven't heard anyone talk about this because we know the flow of fentanyl if we take the administration at its word, that they're trying to stop the flow of drugs. If we take the administration at its word, that fentanyl is killing millions of Americans and disproportionately more so than any other drug. If we take the administration at their word, what does that mean for Canada, since we know that most of fentanyl is flowing in from Mexico and Canada? Does this mean that the Trump administration is going to further delve into the idea of making Canada a 51st state? Remember, we're not exactly on the greatest terms with Canada at this moment. We're not on the greatest terms with Mexico at this moment. And if the past is prologue, if Venezuela is pointing us in a direction as far as this Trump international doctrine, then it is reasonable to come to the conclusion it's not going to begin and end with Venezuela, and it's going to further escalate with Venezuela. And we all know once you get into these type of international situations, you can't necessarily control what happens or the response from other countries in the region. And that's just Venezuela. I'm quite sure I'll be talking more about this with John Rothmann at the bottom of the hour. But there is something else I have to say, and it may surprise some folks.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I don't like admitting when I was wrong. I hate it. I'd rather go to bed thinking that I'm always right. It makes me sleep easier. Okay, I'm telling you something about me personally. My wife will tell you I am loath to admit when I'm wrong, but I'm going to admit I was wrong. Here's what I mean. Kim, I know you remember, and this wasn't even when I was hosting. This was when I was talking as a commentator with Mark Thompson. And Mark was talking about the No Kings protests. And I was vehement in my pushback. I'm saying, look, okay, there's symbolism and there's substance. I get the symbolism of all the marches. I get the symbolism of seeing the millions of people in the streets holding up their signs, talking about how we are not a country which has a king. And I said, oh, that's nice. You got some people on TV. They got on the news. Maybe they got some more social media followers. It was a good moment. And I believe the Democrats made themselves feel good. We just talk about it through a political lens. But then I was asking, like, well, does this lead anywhere? Does it mean anything? Does it substantially have any teeth? Is it something that moment could be turned into momentum, and you could turn it into a movement? If you could demonstrate that it's turning into a movement, then maybe I perceived it wrong. And given what we've seen in the last few elections, yes, Democrats lost the special election in Tennessee, but they closed the gap considerably in that special congressional election. We have been now able to see with the mayoral election in Miami, in which Democrat Eileen Higgins will be the next mayor of Miami. And Miami, let's not forget, is in Florida. And yes, Miami-Dade County is one of the Democratic strongholds. But the city of Miami, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kim, the city of Miami had not had a Democratic mayor in 30 years. They never had a female mayor. And also, this is the first non-Hispanic mayor in many decades. And that says to me that the politics may be a changing in not only Florida, but around the country. So let me go back to what I was saying before. I was wrong. I was under the opinion that the No Kings marches didn't really have a substantive impact. I've been proven wrong because I can connect the dots and I can draw now a straight line between those protests and election results. Meaning, I can't say the Democrats would have enjoyed this success without that which preceded it. And now, Kim, can I stop admitting I was wrong? Can I?
You can stop admitting you're wrong. You know what I wonder, though? How bad was for a Democrat to win after 30 years of having no Democratic mayor in Miami? How bad was the Republican candidate? Like, who was that person that ran against her?
And that's hard for me to tell because we weren't on the ground in the city. Now, the previous election, the incumbent was beloved and won by, like, I don't know, some 60 points or something ridiculous. So this was a wide open election. So it tells you that whatever the Republicans had done before did them no favors in this race. It tells you that there is a change in sentiment of the perception of the Republican Party in a very red state. Does that mean that Florida will go blue in the coming presidential election? Does it mean that the Republicans will lose seats in Congress through the state of Florida in 26? No, it doesn't. But it says that there's a greater possibility. It says that it might be trending in that direction. I'm old enough to remember when Florida was a solidly purple state. I remember when Georgia was a solidly red state and the Democrats made it solidly purple. So it's not impossible.
Yeah.
You were going to say, Kim?
No, it's interesting. I saw the video of this new mayor, Higgins, I think is her name.
Yes.
And she's got this kind of high voice. She sounds like a teacher to me. I think it'll be interesting to see what she does with Miami. And maybe, she does a really good job. It'll shake up politics there. So they realize that, that you don't have to be a Republican to have success in Florida.
Before we go to the video surrounding Eileen Higgins, let's not forget, once you have an elected official there, it kind of opens the door for other politicians to come and engage in retail politics in the state of Florida. As Eileen Higgins will be going around the state between now and November of 2026, she will have other Democratic politicians maybe running for governor, maybe running for local office, state offices. It allows the Democrats to have a legitimate foothold in a state in its largest metropolitan area. in a state that the Democrats have not won a statewide office since President Obama. So we're talking going on close to 20 years now. This is significant. Let's check out what's happening in Miami right now. Tony?
And breaking news tonight, another big city mayoral race with a whole lot of national attention. The city of Miami appears to have possibly elected its first Democratic mayor in nearly 3 decades. According to the Associated Press, Eileen Higgins is the projected winner of the mayoral runoff election, with 99% of precincts reporting. The Democrat has over 59% of the vote right now, as she spoke to reporters just moments ago.
It's very exciting to be the first woman to serve the city of Miami. It's hard to think of it that way because we always know Miami was founded by a woman. But I hope this just sends a message to any girls or teenagers out there that, of course, you can be a mayor.
And for Republicans, this is their gut check coming on the heels of the New York mayoral race, where voters opted for Democratic Socialist Zohran Mamdani over the President Trump's backed Andrew Cuomo, and gubernatorial defeats in Virginia, also in New Jersey. And even though Trump is not on the ballot, he continues to dominate the political conversation. Jesse Kirsch joins us now from Miami. Jesse, a lot of firsts here. First woman mayor elected, first Democrat potentially here in like 30 years, first non-Latinos since the 90s. How did we get here?
So, Gotti, and to be clear, right, the results are still finalizing, still unofficial on the county website, but it is shaping up to potentially be a pretty substantial win here for Eileen Higgins, close to 60% of the vote going for her, around 40.5% of the vote for the Republican Emilio Gonzalez. To be clear, in 2024, former Vice President Kamala Harris actually narrowly won the city of Miami. So the idea of a Democrat winning the city is not far-fetched, but certainly this is shaping up to be potentially a landslide victory. And I want to read to you what President Trump had posted on social media over the weekend.
This is
Speaking
key.
of this race, he says, quote, "It is a big and important race with 3 exclamation points." So this was something that was getting the attention of the President of the United States, of multiple national political figures in both
Let's stop
parties.
right there. We know that the president's a liar, but he was correct in that regard. It was a hugely important race, not only for the Democrats, but also for the Republicans, because most people understand momentum and trajectory. And this momentum is palpable. And with these election wins, it is also measurable. It is objectively verifiable. You can see how the Democrats as a party are not dead and they're gaining momentum. That has nothing to do with personal allegiance. If you are a Republican, you're following the same news. They still have to report the exact same thing on Fox News today, that the Republicans lost a major stronghold in the city of Miami. Now, here's something else. If you want to get really inside baseball, as they say, and hopefully John Rothmann might be able to hear this, or I'll reiterate it with him. I was concerned in a political sense whether the Democratic Party was going to shy away from having female candidates, from pursuing women in elected offices. And you know where I'm going with this, Kim, because after Hillary Clinton's loss, after Kamala Harris's loss, after some other losses around the country in recent years, you heard this common refrain, well, the Democrats need a white male for this, so they need to have a male for this. And then you see the election of Eileen Higgins. You see the election of Zohran Mamdani. And you can see at least the Democrats maybe reluctantly leaning in to their respective ethnic bases around the country as it makes sense. In other words, the Democrats weren't running away from it. They were leaning into it. And it was Zohran Mamdani. I know that they were reluctant, right, and the party was late to the party, pun intended, but they eventually got on the train. And you're seeing more and more democratically elected officials embrace publicly Zohran Mamdani. So the Democratic Party, they may have learned some lessons from 2024, but they didn't necessarily throw away all the goodwill with the various communities and constituencies that they had gained over the past 10 years or so. What say you, Kim?
There might be a difference between a couple different things. There might be a difference between what's acceptable to certain communities as a mayor. We'll take somebody of color, we'll take a woman, right, in certain circumstances. But when it comes to running a person of color or a woman at the presidential level, perhaps we've been burned a couple times too many. And I don't know if they're ready to put forth someone again that, would come at a time when we need to roll back the everything Trump has done. So I don't think we can take chances. But regarding Higgins, I do think it's important to note that she made this into kind of a referendum on Trump. Her city is they have a very large immigrant population in Miami.
Yes.
And she focused a lot of her campaign on immigration. According to The Guardian, they say she presented the election to voters as a referendum on the president's policies, which have included supporting Florida's Republican Governor Ron DeSantis in the construction of the notorious Alligator Alcatraz immigration jail and moves to end temporary protected status and humanitarian parole programs for various immigrant groups, including Venezuelans, Haitians, and Cubans. And they say that her messaging resonated in Miami, where the inhabitants are 57% foreign born. So because she made immigration such a huge key part of her platform, I don't think you can say, I think it's very obvious that Miamians were ready to reject what they've seen from Trump.
All right, let's dig down on that and let's go inside baseball, as they say with that. I agree with you on a national level. The Democrats are gun shy, if you will, about being burned again in an electoral college sense with having minority candidates or women as candidates, especially at the top of the ticket. But I was concerned that fear, my word, was filtering down to the local races. And I saw that fear materialize in the reluctance and reticence to get the party behind Zoran Mamdani, who clearly far and away was the best candidate and best for the party. And we were going back and forth about, well, when is Hakeem Jeffries going to endorse? Or when is so-and-so going to come forward and endorse and embrace Mamdani? And it said to me, it's like, the Democrats are skittish. They're afraid of giving the people what they want. They're afraid, and I wouldn't say that the fear was unfounded. I'm saying I thought the fear was almost going to be paralyzing. They were afraid of being branded the Democratic Socialist Party. They're going to be branded that no matter what. Make sure you support the candidates who can bring it home, who can do the most for you. Zoran Mamdani is a star in the party. Allow him to be that star. Support him. Be damned what the Republicans say. And that's the fundamental difference, I think, between Republicans and Democrats. Republicans don't care, especially in the age of MAGA. They don't give a damn what Democrats may think about MAGA, what they do, what they espouse, who they support, policies that they promote. They don't care. And that's, I would say, is part of Donald Trump and MAGA's superpower. It's all about owning the libs. They actually revel in the fact that people get mad at what they do. They don't care. If the Democrats can be empathetic in their policies, pragmatic in how they do their politics, but stop caring about what MAGA and Republican voters on the spectrum who have no chance of ever voting for a Democrat, stop worrying about them, then you will find the Democratic Party will go further than ever before. And it seems like they're getting closer and closer to that.
CC Ryder writing, establishment Democrats have always been terrible at defending democratic socialism and clarifying the lies and distortions by the GOP. Mamdani went hard and won.
Yeah. And Kim, to your point, I'm not disregarding the fact that it's easier, quote unquote, to go balls to the wall, all out, carefree, footloose in a local election. I get it. You are catering to a much smaller constituency and contingency. Whereas when you're trying to campaign for president, you're trying to reach everyone from Iowa to New York to Florida and everything in between as far as what that may represent. And that's much more difficult, and you have to have a much broader message. I get that. But as far as the intra-party politics of the Democratic Party, look, a lot of times I would say the Democrats are weak, and it has to do with them not standing up when the times call for it. And a lot of times, if you're not standing up for your own people, you're doing yourself a larger disservice than one would think. And hopefully, because of Eileen Higgins winning in Miami, hopefully, because of Zoran Mamdani winning in New York, you will see a different type of momentum. And the Democratic Party, in other words, you know the old saying, dance with who brung you? Mm-hmm. Well, who have been the people have been buttering the bread of the Democrats? Women, minorities, LGBTQ. Don't run away from the people who brought you to the party, the big party. And if the Democratic Party wants to be that big tent party, they need to act like it. And yes, and I say this knowing good and well, the next presidential ticket will have 2 white men on it. I know it. I get it. I understand it. But it doesn't mean it has to be all consuming with their politics on all levels.
Do you think that the voter profile in Miami, largely being immigrants, does that say that, as you say, you know, the people that brought us to the dance, largely Latinos switched over to Trump, right, in the last election? This is what I understand. Yep. But now we see them backtracking from that a little bit, at least in Miami, and choosing to throw their support behind a mayor who makes this a referendum on Trump's immigration policies. So I wonder if maybe Latino voters are trying to buy, to use your euphemism, trying to buy a Democratic ticket to the dance now. Will we see that in the midterms? And will we see that in the next presidential election? That they're so turned off by everything going on with ICE, the brutality, the cruelty, the lies, saying that he was going after criminals. And now they're even getting people that are self-deporting, right? I mean, so perhaps they're so disgusted by that that's an indicator as to why they chose this Miami mayor.
There's evidence to support that. We have actual data to support that now. There are 2 things to consider. Since we know that Donald Trump did better in the second, in his third election than he did in his second election, due largely to the increase in Latino support. We know that is true. There's evidence to support that. Now there's evidence to support that the gains he made within Hispanic and Latino communities, which are not the same, but those gains have been eroded because of these ICE tactics, because of this immigration, quote unquote, immigration policies, plural. He cannot be as popular with the Hispanic and Latino communities, as evidenced in Miami, Florida, now as he was in 2024. When he was running in 2024, there were 4 years in between where Hispanics and Latinos could have had the reasonable belief that, well, Trump wasn't that bad, or you romanticize what he was during his first administration. No, this will be on the tips of everyone's tongues, and it'll be in our very recent memory when we go to the polls in not only 2026, but 2028.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm looking forward. If this is any indicator, I am looking forward, Mo.
Well, if you want to be able to look at the tea leaves and say that there is good news for Democrats to celebrate, this is it. These aren't the moral victories. These aren't the symbolic victories. These are the real victories and the tangible evidence that points to a progression for Democrats where they're moving in the right direction, and more importantly, their message is resonating with voters, even on a smaller level. Let's not forget, Kamala Harris she underperformed Joe Biden in Miami-Dade County. That's what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. She underperformed in Florida relative to Joe Biden. In other words, the gap got larger in 2024 relative to 2020. This suggests that gap is shrinking. Now, it has other implications as well. It has implications for the gubernatorial race in Florida. I'm not saying that the Democrat can win in Florida governor, but it might be able to flip a few seats in Florida. It makes it much more competitive. It makes the Republican Party have to invest more money in Florida as opposed to just assuming that they're going to win. When in previous election cycles, yeah, you could assume that.
I think that we're just about 1 year into the Trump presidency, not even a year yet, right? I mean,
nope, not even a year.
It's still under a year. And if he's pissed enough people off that voted for him last time, likely, if he's pissed enough Latino voters off and people in Florida off, what does that say about the next 3 years ahead?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, he can't stop, won't stop as far as his crusade to be cruel and mean and vicious. So if, he seems to be on a roll when it comes to alienating the people that supported him.
That's how I feel about it. That's how you feel about it, Kim.
Yeah.
But there's someone else I would love to get the thoughts of.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Joining us now is presidential historian, political analyst, and former KGO talk show host, the inimitable John Rothmann. John, my friend, it is great to talk to you again. I know you've been watching what has been going on like I have. What did you make? Let me just start where I was finishing up. What did you make of the Miami mayoral race?
Amazing. And if you're familiar with Miami, and I talked to friends in Miami this morning, it was an overwhelming victory, almost 60-40. And this is a profound shift. Now, it's true that Kamala Harris carried Miami-Dade in the last election, but nothing like what we saw. It is a complete blowout. And I have to tell you, it was framed as a choice of rejecting Donald Trump, and that's exactly what happened. The Republican nominee, who was very involved, a county commissioner in Miami, received an overwhelming rebuke. And I think that is amazing. By the way, as you pointed out earlier, by the way, I did listen to your opening monologue. The first woman to be elected mayor of Miami. It's really quite astounding.
Should Democrats take this mayoral race and apply it to other races, or just let Miami be Miami?
Miami is Miami, and it has an interesting population if you understand the number of Cubans that are there, and so forth. Excuse me. But my own sense of this is that the Democrats simply have to have the right candidates. That is to say, they have to recruit candidates. If you're going to win an election, you have to have somebody who's electable. And my belief is that the Democrats are doing that right now. They're out recruiting candidates, and you can see in the races which have taken place in the last 3 months, Democrats scoring incredibly well. And even in losing, as we saw last week, they gained substantially. So if I were Donald Trump, I'd be worried. Now, Donald Trump was out on the campaign trail last night. Now, I must tell you, if you listen to what he said, and I listened with great care to his speech, the man is completely irrational. He's still claiming he won the election of 2020. He's still blasting away at the Democrats. He is completely out of control. And may I remind you, it was a long speech, and there was no controlling him. And I think the fear that I have is, and I say this respectfully, a president of the United States who can do what he did last night is out of control. And the American people need to be aware of that. And I think the Republicans are waking up to it. Now, we had a major move this morning where the chairman of the committee in the House of Representatives investigating the second firing on the boat, Chairman Rogers, is now saying he's not going to investigate further. And I think that is at the behest of the president, and that is at the behest of the Secretary of Defense. Please note, I don't call him the Secretary of War. He is not Secretary of War. We haven't had a Secretary of War since the 1940s. I think the Republicans are in the midst of a major cover-up, and you alluded earlier to the Epstein files, which are going to be released. And not only that, Elaine Maxwell's report is going to be released as well. So I think we're in for a very interesting few weeks. Now, the problem is when you have now a Speaker of the House of Representatives who's under attack from his own colleagues, and by the way, women in the Republican Party blasting him, and now his whole taking off again on a woman's right to choose, I have a feeling the Republicans are on the wrong side of history, and I would suggest to you very respectfully that in less than a year in the midterm elections, the Republicans are going to face crashing defeats.
I hate to go all Greek mythology on you, but it seems like this is Scylla and Charybdis here for President Trump. Rock in a hard place. On one side, he's dealing with the issues of the double tap boat strike and that controversy. On the other side, he has Ghislaine Maxwell and the Epstein files. If you are Donald Trump, not that you can get into his insane mind, but if you could at least give us a sense of what he might be more fearful of as far as being a problem for him and his administration.
Donald Trump learned a very valuable lesson from Roy Cohn, who is Joe McCarthy's attorney, and that is strike back, hit back immediately. Don't wait, just keep going. And that is what Donald Trump is doing. He's going on the campaign trail. And interestingly enough, his chief of staff made the comment, she spoke yesterday, that she wants to put Donald Trump on the ballot. That is to say, to make it a referendum on Donald Trump. And I think that is what they're betting on, and I think it's going to be a losing bet. The minute a president of the United States becomes involved in a midterm campaign when his popularity is not high, well, that party has a big problem. And we saw that in 1966 with Lyndon Johnson and Richard Nixon, in terms of Nixon being able to command, if you will, by campaigning. They gained 47 seats in the House of Representatives for the Republican Party by campaigning for them. And so I think there's a lot going on here which needs to be understood, and the politics of this is going to shape out. You're right, exactly, Mo, when you say that the next few weeks are going to be critical, because you have the Maxwell fallout, you have the decision that has to be made about what's going on with Venezuela. And if you noticed, and you did, and I commend you for this, it was great footage that you showed at the beginning of the show, and that was we are now intruding on Venezuelan airspace. And I believe you're right. They're looking for an excuse to hit Venezuela, and I think the Venezuelan leadership is smart enough to know, don't respond. Let them do whatever they want. Don't give them a reason for provocation, because if you do, you know that Donald Trump will order the full military might of the United States, and no country can handle that. Let me also point out that they've got a problem now with Ukraine. Not only has the president basically conceded that Russia is going to triumph, but you now have Zelensky, who is going to offer, I think today or tomorrow, an alternative plan. But it does not include what Donald Trump wants, which is for Ukraine to cede territory. In fact, if you know the way Ukraine works, the leader of Ukraine cannot cede territory. It has to be a vote of the parliament and a referendum of the people. And I can tell you that the resistance feeling in Ukraine is massive. And when you have something else that happened this week, and I'm just throwing this out because I want you to be aware, there was a U.S. security strategy statement made. Have you read that? It talks about the decline of Europe in large measure because of immigration. He's attacking people of color again. And all I can tell you is and I use this term advisedly, but I want people to really understand this. When you can make the accusation that European society is collapsing because of its immigration policy, and when you remember Donald Trump's statement that the blood of America was being polluted by immigrants, you understand that what we're talking about here is a man who is a racist. And let me be on record. I don't want there to be any ambiguity in what I'm saying. He is. And you're seeing that reaction, and that brings me back to Miami. One of the reasons he lost the way he did is because Hispanic and Cuban Americans, and there's a difference, as you know, right? The Hispanic community in San Francisco or California is different than the Cuban community. They understand that this man is no friend of minorities. And so I think we're in for a very interesting ride. And I believe that Donald Trump's credibility is going to be eroded. One last point, because of the Speaker of the House attack on women, I think women are now going to react well. And I noticed you opened with Congresswoman Mace's diatribe at the airport. I listened to the whole tape. It was absolutely outrageous, egregious. And some of her colleagues are saying she's having a mental breakdown. But remember, she is running for governor of the state, and she is going to do everything she can to attract attention to herself. But again, I think the Republican Party has tremendous credibility problems. One last point, if I may. I know you've got many more questions. Remember that Donald Trump suggested on social media this week that the Republican Party rechange its name to become a Trumplican. And I heard that and I thought to myself, my God, what is he talking about? Not to mention all the buildings in Washington now renamed after Donald Trump. The Kennedy Center. Did you watch the thing at the Kennedy Center where he suggested it be the Kennedy Trump Center? And did you see the Institute for Peace, which is now called in Washington? I don't know, Kim, if you've shown that picture, but the Donald J. Trump Institute for Peace, it's outrageous. It's egregious. And I don't care if you're a Democrat, a Republican, a liberal, or a conservative. The man who's in the White House now, and I say this publicly without any hesitation, I think he's lost his balance.
Conventional wisdom would say, hey, during a midterm election and conventional is no longer applies, it's no longer applicable. Conventional wisdom is that the party in power, the party which holds the Oval Office, invariably loses seats in Congress during the midterms. Who is controlling the party? Again, this is rhetorical. Who is controlling the party and not informing Donald Trump that the more that he is out on the quote unquote campaign trail, the more damage he is doing to his midterm chances of
nobody
remaining
has
in power?
The guts to do it. And may I point out, we had a president once who was very unpopular. His name was Andrew Johnson. He's the only president of the United States who went through a trial in the Senate and nearly was convicted. Only Edmund Ross of Kansas saved him from being thrown out. Remember what Johnson did? He went on the circuit in 1866 in advance of the midterms to try to encourage support, and he was repudiated. I think every time Donald Trump opens his mouth, it's an embarrassment. And I even believe that that applies to his supporters. And you can hear it now. You can hear it from people who support it, including, and I want to make sure we mention this, Marjorie Traitor Greene. I mean, can you imagine what he's saying about Marjorie Greene, who supported him solidly? I think Trump is damaging Republican chances in the midterms, and there is no strong Republican Party. It is, as Donald Trump Jr. said on the ellipse on January 6th, no longer the Republican Party. It is the party of Donald Trump. And that is an American tragedy, because in this country, for democracy to work, you need a functioning, vital, vibrant two-party system. And the Republicans, I think, are making a terrible mistake.
What role will Marjorie Taylor Greene play in this midterm? Will she actively campaign against the interests of Donald Trump? Will she be a thorn in his side or something else?
Oh, I'm sorry, I have no idea. I can only remember that Marjorie Taylor Greene talked about Jewish space lasers that were lighting the fires in Southern California. She never had any credibility with me. She has no credibility now, and I hope she plays no role, because if you listen to her comments on 60 Minutes, there is a real tinge of Jew hatred in her comments. And
tinge? No, it's more than tinge.
Well, I'm trying to be gentle, but I'm glad I have you.
We're going to be honest here, though. It's overt, it's blatant, it's unmistakable, it's imminently recognizable.
Yeah, it's disgusting, and the Republican Party ought to be denouncing it. Now, the good news for Marjorie Taylor Greene is that she has now become a spectacle, and I'm sure she will parlay that into something, whether it's running for elective office or a spot on a network news program. And I don't mean a mainstream network news program.
You make a great point, because most people who are running for office these days, especially in the age of Trump, are not running for elected office. They're running for the next thing, the book tour or the radio show, the television show.
That's what she's doing. And you can bet your life there'll be a book. But the important thing is that the Republican Party needs to understand what's happening. You know, I don't want to dismiss the Republican Party. I don't want to write them off completely, because I want to remind you that the policies Republicans have pursued have not been universally bad. And one of the things that I noticed in the president's statement dealing with security strategy is he wants to separate the United States from Europe. It has been the position of every American president since Harry Truman to reinforce that European connection. And when Donald Trump attacks Europe, essentially saying that because of their immigration policy and because of their affinity for, people coming in who are not like them,
Right.
it is clearly racism without any question about it. And I get, because of my podcast, I get a lot of listeners who respond, and we have a lot of people listening. And I say this very clearly. I believe that my statements are not only defensible, but they're correct. It doesn't mean I can't be wrong. By the way, I appreciated your opening by pointing out that you were wrong. Don't think I'm not listening to you. I am. But the simple fact is,
It was painful.
history will judge this administration and this president harshly. I have not talked about the FBI and the role of Kash Patel and the role of the Attorney General of the United States. It's a disgrace. Pam Bondi is a disgrace. The whole operation of this administration is thoroughly corrupt. And by the way, when a president of the United States institutes a tariff policy and then has to take $12 billion, did you hear that with a B? $12 billion to bail out the farmers who he has hurt with his tariffs. And I'm waiting for the Supreme Court. We haven't even raised that. So if you don't mind, Mo, I'm going to raise one more issue.
Raise it.
So the Supreme Court now has, as all of you know, a 6-3 majority of the conservatives. They're talking about expanding presidential power. Now, I'll be blunt with you. There are some presidents who I trust with expanded power. There are presidents who I believe act responsibly with expanded power. I do not believe that this president acts responsibly. And the fact that the Supreme Court appears based on the question and answers, and I listened intently to the discussion, the questions that were posed, appears to be willing to grant this president more power. Let me add this word of caution. If it happens, there ultimately will be a Democrat in the White House. And that Democrat will hopefully be able to reverse some of the things Donald Trump is doing. But the fact that the co-equal branches of government are no longer co-equal, the fact that the Supreme Court is going to side with Donald Trump evidently on this, I still hope they'll resist it. And the fact is that when you stop and you think about the fact that Speaker Johnson kept the House of Representatives out of session for the longest amount of time imaginable, is to me an absolute violation of what our founders wanted. Go back and read the Federalist Papers. Read what Madison said. Read what Jefferson said. Read what they said, and you will understand clearly that this president is no respecter of constitutions or separation of powers, and that to me also is an abomination.
Let me ask you this as we bring our conversation to a close on this day, John Rothmann. If it's not going to be the racism, if it's not going to be the corruption, if it's not going to be the election losses, or maybe it's the election losses, what is going to be the tipping point, if there is one, for the Republicans to say, this guy is an albatross and anchor for our own interests as the Republican Party?
Hubris. Donald Trump's hubris, his contempt for democratic principles, that will ultimately bring him down. And the minute the Republicans see that it's not a winning issue, they'll desert him. Look what they did on the Epstein matter. What you saw was the White House trying and Speaker Johnson trying together to prevent the president, to prevent the Congress from doing what it has done. There was a mass defection. Only one member of the House, a Republican, voted against the release of the Epstein files. That was a warning sign that the Republican Party, at least those who still have a conscience, will not go quietly into Donald Trump's dark night. I believe very strongly that this is a time when resistance needs to be voiced by Republicans. I know how the Democrats feel. God bless the Democrats. But let me tell you, they're not Simon Pure either. It is time for Republicans to stand up. I was recalling with someone the other day, as you know, Mo, I worked for Richard Nixon. I will always remember at the height of the Watergate crisis in August of 1974, when Barry Goldwater, the Republican nominee for president in 1964, Mr. Integrity, Mr. Republican, Mr. Conservative, went down to the White House with Hugh Scott, who was a liberal Republican and who was the Senate minority leader, and John Rhodes, a very conservative Republican from Arizona, who was the House Republican leader. They went down to the White House to confront Richard Nixon. And Nixon turned to Barry Goldwater and he said, Barry, how many votes do I have in the Senate? And Goldwater responded, Mr. President, at most 6, and I am not one of them. That's what the Republican leadership has to do in order to cleanse them of their sin, the sin of backing Donald Trump. And let me tell you, it will come back to haunt the Republicans. And if the midterm elections of 1974, when the Republicans were overwhelmingly defeated by the Democrats, is any indication, I think there will be a backlash by minorities, by women, by Republicans with a conscience, by, frankly, people who love the Constitution. And that's what bothers me most about the Supreme Court. They call themselves originalists or strict constructionists. And if they really believe that, Mo, if they really believe that, they could not vote with the president on these issues. It is, to me, I can tell you right now, Clarence Thomas and Sam Alito will vote with the president come hell or high water.
No matter what.
You have 3 liberals on the court who will oppose him no matter what. And you have the balance of the court, and the 2 people I'm looking at very carefully are Chief Justice John Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett. Those 2 are the real swing votes. If they desert, it will be a 5-4 against Donald Trump. And by the way, this is a battle against Donald Trump. And as I've said before, there are some presidents who I would have trusted with a certain matter of power, but not in this case. So for the Republicans, they must redeem themselves. They've sold themselves. I always tell people, read the book, the short play, The Devil and Daniel Webster by Stephen Vincent Benet, in which a man sells his soul to the devil for success. And Daniel Webster defends him. And it's a brilliant story and one well worth reading, very short. But that's what the Republicans have done. They have sold their souls and the soul of the Republican Party to Donald Trump. And that, to me, is the ultimate tragedy of American politics. If you believe, as I believe, in a strong, vital, vibrant 2-party system, I would like to find Republicans that I can support. And I have supported Republicans in the past without any hesitation. But to realize that what we now have is a party where if anyone stands up and disagrees with Donald Trump, they immediately are attacked. They're threatened with being primaried. The Donald Trump threatens to raise money to defeat them. What do you think he did for this campaign coming up? He's telling Republicans, you want me to support you? You want me to raise money for you? You back me 100%. And I think one of the most important lessons that I learned on 60 Minutes is when we heard the discussion about the traitor, and that she was so angry at being called a traitor. When you listened to her response, that's what really offended her, that Donald Trump would attack her personally. Even, by the way, she talked about the fact that her son, who was in his 20s, that his life was threatened, and the White House just dismissed it as if it meant absolutely nothing. That kind of callous indifference, that kind of, I am just, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who I will never say I agree with anything, hit the nail on the head. So we'll have to wait and see. But isn't it great, Mo? We have the Mark Thompson program where we can come on and express our point of view. And for all of those listening, you can either listen to us or you can turn us off. You can agree with us. You can send Mark Thompson an email and say, get rid of that Mo and get rid of that John. These 2 guys are terrible. You can do that. But you know what? Thank God we can. Because when you take a look at what Donald Trump is trying to do in terms of controlling communications in this country, his attacks on the media, well, we have a real responsibility. And so I know you're going to do what Mark Thompson does to me, and that's say, John, your time is up.
No. I actually had one question that I wanted you to close with.
You keep this up and we'll replace Mark with you.
Yeah, and it takes into account everything you've said, and I agree with everything you said. There will come a point in time, hopefully, in which the Republicans will do what Republicans of the 1970s did with Richard Nixon, and we all know that story very well. But here's the difference. I would say that Richard Nixon still believed the country above party and above himself at his core. This man is not going to go gently into that good night, as we have been saying. So what is the response if and when, taking into account January 6th, what is the response going to be from this maniac if and when the Republican Party says, we've had enough of you, Donald Trump?
You and I, Mo, agree 100%. His lesson, learned from Roy Cohen, is attack, attack, attack. He never concedes defeat. He never concedes his own failing. I got to tell you something. If Joe Biden had given the kind of speech, the rambling, incorrect, factually missing speech that Donald Trump gave last night, there would have been calls for saying that he was completely out of his mind. Yes. I believe that if it applies to the goose, it should apply to the gander. And I believe Donald Trump demonstrated last night in his speech, which I heartily commend all of you to listen to, you will see the irrationality. Frankly, we live in a dangerous world. And the last thing I want to see is a president of the United States who is irrational. That should scare every single one of us, Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative, doesn't matter what you are, whether you're a Trump supporter or a Trump opponent. You know what bothers me the most, Mo? That the people who support Donald Trump don't see it. They don't.
No, yes, they do. No, they see it,
Good.
But they are okay with the benefits of supporting him. Don't tell me, John, that Congress doesn't see it. Don't tell me that Tom Cotton and Lindsey Graham don't see it. They see it.
No, they're just afraid. It's fear. It's fear. But let me point out to you, the president has initiated $12 billion as a bailout for the farmers of America. So I'm going to tell you, the farmers of America had better wake up. They understand what's happening. And I hope all Americans will as well.
Presidential historian, political analyst, and former KGO talk show host of the podcast Around the Political World with John Rothmann. John, I look forward to talking to you.
One more plug, because many of our listeners are from San Francisco. Please go, you see it at the bottom of your screen, go to the Voice of San Francisco. I am the Voice of San Francisco. And if you go to podcasts, you will see we attack this. And I see you've just put up the Devil and Daniel Webster. There was a radio drama done of the Devil and Daniel Websters, and it was absolutely wonderful. But Mo, it's always a pleasure to appear with you. And please tell Mark we missed him, but we're happy you're here.
We're happy.
And Kim McAllister. Got Kim? I'm sending you hugs and kisses. She's always the best.
John Rothmann, appreciate you, love you. Talk again soon.
The Mark Thompson Show.
And that for me is the fundamental question. We know that there will be a tipping point. I don't know. I hope there's a tipping point.
There has
I just
to
don't
be
know what it is.
Point. I mean, it's the one good thing when you see this provocative action with, fighter jets flying around, hovering over Venezuela or whatever. And there's a breaking story. I don't know if you saw this about this oil tanker that apparently had eluded the Navy, and then it was captured and now seized off the coast of Venezuela. I think it might be a Russian tanker. But you see these provocative things happen, and it can weigh heavy. Like there's a fear of what's the United States is going to be involved in. And then you see something like the Miami mayoral race, which is a referendum on Trump's policies. And you think, oh, okay, people are coming to their senses. This is good. There might be a way out for us, right? And it's this positive moment where at least it gives you some hope for the future.
Here's my concern, and this is what I was kind of alluding to with John Rothmann. Mm-hmm. We, as a nation, could be waking up. But with our awakening, that increases the desperation of a very dangerous individual. There's one thing to not like the policies. It's another thing to ignore the irrational behavior, the impulsive behavior, to engage in these escalations, which inevitably impact all of us as Americans. And the more desperate he gets, I believe the larger the escalation in Venezuela and other conflicts will get. And I don't know what the man personally would do if hypothetically the Republicans went to him a la Richard Nixon and said, we need you to step down. I don't believe they ever would, but just imagine that scenario, what this man could or would do when we know that he has no personal boundaries. He has no type of limiting, self-editing, limiting function, which says that this is either inappropriate, that is illegal, that is unconscionable, that is unthinkable. There are no boundaries with him. So when you're dealing with someone who's calculated, unprincipled, insane, my word, cognitively deteriorating, I don't know where that leads us. And I'm not saying any of this for hyperbole. I mean, to John's point, if you saw that campaign rally last night, the mother father is insane.
Yeah, he is insane, but nobody cares. People are just like, yeah, he's insane. We know. And then they move on.
But it's almost like they want to characterize him as he's the drunk uncle who shows up around Christmas. Yeah. Just let him talk, and we're going to send him back to his room at the end of the evening. No, he has the nuclear codes, and he is indiscriminate as far as what he does at any given moment, regardless of who it may impact or who it may kill.
Do you think that he's really running things? That he's capable of day-to-day business and making the decisions? You know, or do they just trot him out for these speeches where he goes a little crazy? You know, he gets a little angry and he has to be managed. I remember the former chief of staff saying, you know, we just kind of manage him. We understand. I kind of, you know, bring him down a little bit. But now he's even older, and I just wonder what's really going on in the White House.
I would bet it's a combination of, yes, Stephen Miller is doing his thing. Yes, Susie Wiles is doing her thing. And they're probably doing their own pet projects. Like, I believe immigration is all Stephen Miller. Trump agrees with it, but gives Stephen Miller to do the latitude to do whatever. I don't believe that Trump is actually typing all of that social media. I just don't.
Yeah.
I believe that there are other people who are doing it, but I absolutely believe that they are 100% in agreement and in concert with each other. What I mean by that is, you can ask them, well, what about this pardon for so-and-so? Well, I don't know who that is, or I really didn't know. And I take him at his word. I believe that certain things are being pushed past him, but he doesn't disagree with it. It's not like it's encouraging him to take larger stock of what's going on in his administration. So for me, it's neither here nor there. Whether Stephen Miller is the one who's basically at the controls of all things immigration or Donald Trump, don't really care. Whether it's if it's Pete Hegseth calling the shots as far as our foreign policy as opposed to Donald Trump, doesn't really matter, because they're all in it together. They're all working together on this. And whether Donald Trump is specifically saying, hey, I want you to send up those 2 jets so we can further escalate things off the coast of Venezuela, doesn't mean much to me. But I do know that Donald Trump is okay with getting us in another war. I do know his remarks publicly feed into the perception that we are going to get in a war with Venezuela. We don't value our relationships with Europe and NATO, and there are all sorts of unintended consequences because of that. We do know that there will eventually be some sort of response on the global stage to all this chaos and disruption of Donald Trump, and it's going to put our troops in harm's way. It's going to put the citizens abroad and domestically in harm's way, and I don't know if and when that other shoe is going to drop, but I do know that the buck, proverbially, as they say, stops with the president. Is he making all the decisions? Probably not. Probably not. Because his health couldn't possibly allow him.
You heard him the other day, you know, he's like, release the video of the second strike. And then he had to backtrack and go, oh, well, whatever Hegseth wants, it's fine.
Well, let's do the math.
Yeah.
Kim, let's do the math. We know that he watches TV an inordinate amount because he can quote chapter and verse what his detractors are saying. He's watching MS Now. He's watching CNN while supposedly he's running the country. He's watching TV. He's golfing. He's on social media. Those are the things that we can confirm. Now, is he actually reading the intelligence reports, the daily briefings? No. Is he involving himself in the day-to-day minutiae of economic domestic policy? No. But you know that how he spends his time is in a way that he's aware of some things, he's not aware of other things, he's involved in some things, not aware in other things. The problem is, it's not just a mismanagement of time. We're talking about someone who cognitively, by all public accounts at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and claim it, he is impaired and declining. And because of that, it allows other people to do things with or without his knowledge.
And it's interesting that it seems so obvious. And I think everyone knows that he's declining. He's not the same. If you watch videos of him from years ago, he's not the same person.
No.
Right?
And let me jump in there. I said the exact same thing about Joe Biden. This is not about politics.
Yeah.
This is about watching a person decline. You could listen to the pronouncements in the public address of Joe Biden when he was just vice president under Barack Obama and just listen to his cadence and his diction.
Yep.
Like night and day difference from when he was first president. And it was undeniable. Now it got to be untenable when we got to the presidential debate, but it was undeniable prior to that. We're having the same discussion now, but the Republicans by and large are saying, well, look, we got the ball rolling in the right direction with immigration as far as what I like. I don't mind the racism, the Republicans. It's not disqualifying. You know, I'm personally making money. The moves that he's making surrounding crypto benefits me and those in my circle. So there's no reason to upset and tip over the apple cart because the guy's a little crazy, quote unquote.
I was reading the other day. I have a family member who had a medical incident recently, and I was looking at the signs of dementia, not to say the president has or does not or has or doesn't have it, because I'm clearly not a doctor, but saw one of the symptoms is cruelty. And for a person that, you know, maybe it seems to me that cruelty is at the core of its personality, but there are people that were completely lovely and kind and then suffered some type of event or lost cognitive function. And for some reason, they lose their filter and they're cruel and they're mean. And it's, you know, through no fault of their own, one of the symptoms of some type of cognitive issue.
Randy/D23W makes the point, too many Dems covered for Biden for too long. I'd agree with that. But there's something else I blame Biden, the person, for, and only him. Let's not forget when Biden was running for president against Trump in 2020, he made it very clear that he was supposed to be a transitional figure. He was supposed to be a one-term president. That's what he said. And many people voted for him in 2020 with the expectation and acknowledgement that if he were to win, he would step aside and most likely Kamala Harris would be the heir apparent, because usually when you have a president, they're going to defer to their vice president to succeed them and supplant them. If Joe Biden stuck to that plan, there would have been no issue, number one, about his cognitive issues because he wouldn't have been running again. There wouldn't have been any debate performance to discuss. Kamala Harris would have had a full primary, so there wouldn't have been the Democratic infighting. It doesn't mean that it would have changed the trajectory of the election, but most likely Kamala Harris would have been in a better position. The Democratic Party would have been a better position as opposed to this truncated 107-day campaign cycle. And we now know, given the book of all the infighting surrounding that, all of that would have been avoided. You would not have had this contentious, at least internally contentious convention, and the Democrats would have been in a prime position to win. Because again, Trump wants to say it was a landslide. It was only 1.5% as far as the national vote, and those swing states were a lot closer than people want to admit. If, to me, and this is all hypothetical, if Joe Biden made it very clear during his presidency that he was not going to seek re-election and he could take his ego out of it, I don't believe Donald Trump is president today.
I just don't think this is the first time this has happened. We saw it with Biden. One wonders Ronald Reagan had Alzheimer's, and they say that he was very, that it was affecting his final years in the White House.
It was. I can confirm this. A friend of mine, Michael Reagan, is a friend of mine. I've known him for years, and I've had this conversation with him. And some of the things that he told me, Michael said that it had to do with a riding injury as far as riding a horse. That was part of the reason. And that may be true. Mm-hmm. But it was not denied that he was declining while in office. It was an inescapable truth. The real difference is there was no social media. There was no 24/7 news coverage. We are accustomed to seeing a president far more than in the 1980s.
Sure.
If only because you don't have the type of coverage. You don't have the coverage of the news, the White House press corps, social media. You don't have any of that. So we weren't exposed to the president as often as we are now. We have a guy in Donald Trump who's going out on campaign rallies who's not even constitutionally eligible to run again. Who does that?
Yeah.
But again, we get to assess his cognitive impairment because he does that, and he will stand at a lectern for an hour and a half talking about how virile he is when he's just spouting, gibberish for the most part. We get to assess him almost every single day because he loves a microphone and a camera, which was not the case 40 years ago.
Right. It's true, but I think it goes to a pattern as far as, retaining power and having that be the most important thing instead of putting the country first and having someone at the helm who actually is competent enough to be there. And Trump isn't the first president to do that.
He's not. I really want to underscore this point. I am afraid, in a genuine sense of fear, I'm afraid, assuming his health lasts to the end of his term, and that's not a foregone conclusion. I am afraid that we get to the point where his presidency is unsustainable because of his health, and he refuses to relinquish power. What that might lead to, that type of desperation. The ballroom is all about his legacy. Renaming buildings is all about his legacy. He is conscious that he is at least physically declining, and he has far more days behind him than in front of him, just to be generous. I'm scared to think what he may do to hold on to power to at least to the end of this term, assuming that he doesn't stroke out. And I'm not wishing that on him. I'm just saying that the guy is seriously in poor health on a number of fronts. And in the way we question cognitive impairment of Joe Biden, this is with Donald Trump. We're talking about cognitive. We're talking about physical. We're talking about just his body falling apart, where I would not be surprised if he had a major medical event in the middle of a speech. We were not worried about that with Joe Biden. We were wondering, is this guy declining? Is he having some degree of impairment, Alzheimer's, what have you, dementia? Donald Trump, he could fall out at any given moment because we know he's unhealthy. And if Republicans have already started the conversation with him about succession, about transition, about what if, and he is reluctant to entertain that, I wonder what he would do to quote unquote prove that he's either going to remain president or put his detractors in their place.
It'll be fascinating to see if the Supreme Court, if at the end of all this, if this goes to the Supreme Court with regarding a third term or whatever else it's going to be, birthright citizenship seems to be something that, I wouldn't be surprised, even though it's black and white in the Constitution, if they side with Trump on this, just because, as Mark likes to say, it appears they're a concierge court that he has handpicked and bought and paid for. But if he was Delulu, right? If he was out of his gourd and the Supreme Court is faced with, should he be allowed to serve a third term? Do you think do you think they side with rationality, or do you think they still side with the president, even though they see that he's not someone who's in his right mind?
I believe that the Supreme Court definitely does not want to take that up or even have to deal with it. In all honesty, I think nature's going to run its course. If he is this limited in his capacity, and I won't say incapacitated, just limited in his capacity, and we're still not even at the 1 year mark of the first term, do you actually think that this man is going to be on a comparable physical health, comparable mental health level 2 or 3 years from now? Would he be able to even campaign? Would he be able to even sidle up to a microphone for a debate? I think those are things that are so far off in the future. And I always invoke my father because I've seen a person physically decline. It increases speed as you get closer to the end. It's almost like you start running to the cliff. And I'm seeing this precipitous drop, pun intended, in the ability of this man, that his health and deterioration is quickening in speed. It's not about speculation about if something's wrong. It's about how much is wrong and how fast it's getting worse.
Sure.
So to then look ahead to a potential third term, which would end, say it with me, in 2033. He's not living to 2033, and it's not even a guarantee that he's going to make it to 2028. This man is in horrible health right now. And what year is it? It's 2025. So that conversation is premature. I don't think the Supreme Court wants any part of that. And it's one of those things where if they just ignore it long enough, they won't have to deal with it.
Yeah, you might be right. I don't know. I just can't even fathom a third term. I can't even fathom another 3 years, Mo.
No, we can't continue on this trajectory, but let me switch gears very quickly.
The Mark Thompson Show.
You heard in my conversation with John Rothmann, he mentioned Nancy Mace. Nancy Mace, South Carolina Congresswoman. She has moments of lucidity, I would say. I would agree with her in her stance as far as the Epstein files. Everything else, we don't agree. And I mean everything else. Everything. Nancy Mace, for some reason, found herself at an airport, which is not unusual, but found herself berating TSA and police. Check this out. Now, this is just coming out, and the incident stemmed from officers receiving conflicting reports about some sort of conflict. Nancy Mace shows up, and I guess she wasn't treated the way that she expected to be treated, and then she started going off on law enforcement and TSA agents. She went through a TSA checkpoint without a police escort. Now, I would not necessarily expect people to just know who she is by looking at her. Not everyone can recognize the congressional pin, and you can see that she's in just regular clothes. So there's no reason to expect any type of congressional treatment, quote unquote. And she acted an ass. Let me just say it. She acted an ass. And then she was later asked about it, and she denied that she did it for the most part. She lied about cursing at officers, what have you, so much so that even Lindsey Graham and Tim Scott came out and basically blasted her for her behavior, siding with law enforcement and TSA. Go ahead and play the video.
Are you saying you didn't say those things?
Well, you're quoting a document that was in part falsified. They say a lot of things, and the video doesn't show that. There's no audio. I asked for all the body cam footage and the audio. They also state in the report that there was an incident at the gate. The video shows nothing that didn't happen. And so for me, it's important that we tell the truth. And I've taken responsibility. Yes, I was absolutely 100%
But did you say those things that that I just read?
No, I did not. I mean, I definitely.
So you're saying the police officers are lying?
No, I'm saying that is in part false. And that is a falsified document. There are things in there. Most of what's in there that's quoted is not true.
How can you falsify? If it didn't happen, then what is she complaining about? I mean, you can't have it both ways. If there was no incident, then there was no reason. And there's other video out there. I don't know if we have it, Tony, where she is saying, here it is. Go ahead, play it.
I absolutely 100% confronted the airport employees who put my safety at risk.
South Carolina Representative Nancy Mace insists Charleston airport security guards were late to meet her car and to escort her to her flight. Official reports from the incident and timestamps on surveillance video reveal conflicts. The guards expected a white BMW at 6:30. At 6:33, they say they were told she was running 10 to 15 minutes late. She then reportedly showed up in a gray car, and they were summoned to meet her at a security checkpoint inside. The fallout there, however, is undisputed. Mace talking loudly to guards, cursing and saying, "This is no way to treat an effing United States representative."
Did I drop an F-bomb? I hope I did. Did I call them incompetent? If I didn't, they absolutely earned it.
The state's U.S.
Stop there right there, Tony. I want to jump on this. She just said in the last video, talking to Caitlin Collins, that nothing happened. She said that. It can't be nothing happened, but yes, I dropped an F-bomb.
Yeah.
If I call them incompetent, I hope that I did. It's like, it can't be both. And then to say that their reports are wrong, that their account is falsified, when you in two interviews that you gave contradict yourself. They're the liars? No, you're the liar, Nancy.
Sal says they also forgot to lay down rose petals for her to walk on. How dare you? She Karen'd out at the airport. She mistreated the security staff because she was mad that she didn't get the attention that she felt that she needed, or they didn't do what they were supposed to do for someone in her position. And she wigged out because she's crazy.
Okay, but not only is she crazy, let me give you some insight. My sister just retired from LAX. She was responsible for all the ground transportation at LAX. Means whenever there's a dignitary, whenever there's a congressional member, whenever there's someone who's very important and you're arranging ground transportation or TSA to meet them, she would set that up. But she would always be going through the congressperson's aide. In other words, if Nancy Mace did not have what she was looking for, that's the fault of her communications person, not TSA, not the police, because the congressional aide is supposed to meet them first prior to the congressperson getting there. They're never going to meet just the congressperson or the luminary. They're going to meet the congressional aide and then coordinate there. So if she showed up on her own, that's a problem with her office, not TSA. They're not just going to show up just because.
So what do they do because I've interviewed like Congressman Swalwell. At one point he was between flights. He landed at SFO. He's like, I'll come out. I'll talk, let's do the interview really quick outside SFO. I'll talk to you. He comes out by himself. He's at this point, he's a congressman, right? Comes out by himself, talks to me. We do an interview. He jets back in. He goes to a plane. It doesn't look like there's anyone with him. Perhaps there were people inside waiting for him and I didn't realize. But is this a process where they're special, like, they take you through a separate line, or they whisk you through the airport so you don't have to wait with the commoners? Is this something that happens for all Congress people?
No, it only happens if it's set up by the congressperson's office.
Okay.
Now, there are a lot of members of Congress and members of like the state assembly or legislature who are not that difficult or high maintenance, and they will travel by themselves relatively simply without incident. Nancy Mace is obviously high maintenance. She has expectations, but those expectations are only met if her her aides set it up accordingly. And you notice that she was traveling physically by herself. There is no reasonable expectation that she's going to be met. I just know how the process works. TSA and police will meet with the aide, and the aide will then take them to the congressperson, and then all together they walk through TSA. So and she was by herself. So I don't know why she would expect then that she's going to be met and have this police escort.
Is anyone surprised that mean people act meanly?
Yeah.
You
yeah.
are? Because
No,
I think
because I don't think
that-
people understand. I don't think
think it
people
fits.
understand, one, how the process works, and two, if you don't understand how the process works, then everything seems like some sort of disrespect, some sort of slight. Nancy Mace thinks that she was slighted on some level, that TSA didn't do their job to protect her. Like she was supposed to have some protective detail. And she showed up by herself? No. You will never see a mayor or a governor or a member of Congress traveling in need of a detail, traveling by him or herself. I'll give you a perfect example. About a year ago at this point, I was flying into Los Angeles and Alaska Airlines. And lo and behold, walking by me and my wife in the airport was Doug Emhoff. And he had a detail of about 8 people. And what they did was they got him on this flight under a pseudonym. And they got all the Secret Service detail around him under pseudonym. So no one could know, even the people at the gate didn't know that Doug Emhoff was going to be on that flight. The pilots didn't know that Doug Emhoff was going to be on that flight. The point I'm trying to make is all of that is set up in advance. So when Doug Emhoff is walking through the airport, not only does he have the Secret Service detail, he had local police, and he had TSA. All of that was coordinated with his aides who were with him at the time. Doug Emhoff was not traveling by himself. Yes, I get it. There's a level of difference between the second gentleman and a member of Congress. But as far as the coordination, there is no difference.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't surprise me. Her attitude and behavior doesn't surprise me. And doesn't surprise me that she lied about it after the fact.
Yeah. I mean, it's on video. I mean, we can see what happened while she was at the airport. We can see what she said to Caitlin Collins, saying that first she denied the incident altogether. And then when she gets up on a podium by herself and says, yeah, I probably dropped an F-bomb, which means she probably dropped 12. She acknowledges that there was an incident when she's talking and not answering questions, but wants to deny the incident. Tony, please play the Caitlin Collins video again, where we can see she's denying that there was any incident.
Well, that was her being mad, just stomping through the airport.
It flipped to the next video. Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
No, that's okay. That's okay. So as Tony is trying to bring it up, I want to reiterate so people understand that she had the opportunity to tell the truth. She decided not to tell the truth. It was a conscious decision to lie because Caitlin Collins was very pointed in her questions, and I credit her for that, asking about whether something happened and whether TSA and law enforcement had lied because they filled out a report. They clearly had to document and accurately notate what happened. And here's what she had to say.
Are you saying you didn't say those things?
Well, you're quoting a document that was in part falsified. They say a lot of things, and the video doesn't show that. There's no audio. I asked for all the body cam footage and the audio. They also state in the report that there was an incident at the gate. The video shows nothing that didn't happen. And so for me, it's important that we tell the truth. And I
Stop right there. Stop right there. There was no incident. She said there was no incident. There was no incident at the gate. Now, let's one more time listen to what she said when she was at the dais, and I guess it was a press gaggle recounting it.
I absolutely 100% confronted the airport employees who put my safety at risk.
South Carolina Representative Nancy Mace and
No, we can stop right there. No, Tony, we can stop right there because the whole point was she denied that there was any incident. And then she goes on to say, I absolutely 100%. She's sure, she's convinced that she confronted TSA. That sounds like an incident to me. That sounds like something that TSA would have to memorialize in their reports. What are we talking about? We're looking at the video now. That looks like a confrontation. She's pointing her finger and telling TSA to either go do something, get something, where to get off, or whatever. That looks like a confrontation. She's not asking for where my gate is. She's not asking for where Starbucks is. She's clearly complaining.
And because Trump has taught Republicans never admit when you're wrong, never apologize, never be, the person who comes out and tells the truth basically about this whole scene. Now it becomes something else. I think if she had just said, God, you know what? I just had a really, really bad day. It was a comedy of errors. I lost my mind. I want to apologize to the TSA officials at the airport if I mistreated them in any way. I'm so sorry. This is not how I normally operate. A hearty, my bad, I'm sorry. It probably wouldn't have turned into this big conflagration.
Not only that, if she would have said something to the effect of, you know what, I appreciate the job that our federal agents are doing. I know it is harder than ever to manage the affairs of an airport and traffic and security in this post 9/11 world. I appreciate them going out of their way to meet me. There was some sort of miscommunication. I don't know where it was, but you know what? Charge it to my head, not my heart. I may have said some things which were really inappropriate. To your point, like you said, Kim's like, I was having a bad day. It was a long day. There's a lot going on in my district right now, and I want to make sure that my constituents are taken care of. They were my first concern, and not being able to get through security made it more difficult. Let's forget about it. Let's put it behind us and move forward. And you know what? Who can complain after that? Who can even criticize her after that?
Right.
People are allowed to have a human moment. Everyone is allowed to have a human moment. But if you won't allow anyone else to have a human moment, that you must parse blame, that you must exonerate yourself, then I have no sympathy for you.
Yeah. She doesn't apologize. We don't apologize anymore. I guess that's a thing of the past.
And what's this obsession with airports and how they do what they do? I mean, we almost forgot to talk about Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, who was former, reality TV star, who's saying that we need to not only dress better when we travel and not wear pajamas, which is some ludicrous-ish, but also talked about installing pull-up bars at the airport. Now, let's take this piece by piece. If and when the Transportation Secretary starts pitching in on my plane ticket for when, let's say, I'm going to Korea for the second time in June, and that's going to be not cheap, and it's going to be a long trip. It's going to be one which is going to be uncomfortable. I'll probably be on a plane for 13 hours. I've done it before. I'm going to be comfortable. And I wish a mother father would tell me what I need to wear before I get on the flight that I paid $2,500 for.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
Now that's one thing. And then you're going to say, when I have my layover or the time before I get on that flight, you're saying that I should think about exercising, or there needs to be a gym at the airport. Okay, that's fine. But you know what? Let's leave that up to SFO. Let's leave that up to LAX. Let's leave that up to McCarran International Airport. That's not the purview of the Secretary of Transportation. Because remember, almost forgot, remember when former First Lady Michelle Obama said kids should have healthier lunches? They lost their ever-loving mind. They're saying the government needs to stay out of it. So why is it now the government is telling me how to dress before I fly? Why is it the government says I need to be able to do 20 pull-ups before I fly? No, don't get me wrong. I have a suit. I can dress if I need to. And you know what? I can do a real pull-up, because when I was watching RFK do those pull-ups, not a one was an actual pull-up. Play the video. Play the video. His chin does not get over that bar once. Not a pull-up. 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 Nope. Nope. Let's say it in Spanish. Nope. 9. German. Niet. Nope. Not one. Not yet. Nope.
He's coming for you, Paul. He's coming for me.
Nope.
Yeah.
He's sweating. Now, and let's also think about this. What is the purpose of being able to do a pull-up on camera?
Is that a security? Like, is that a metal detector that he was doing pull-ups on, or is it an actual
like it.
bar,
I see
like
the
a pull-up
stanchions
bar?
behind him, so it looks like a
Yeah.
metal detector.
Right.
Oh,
Okay.
I'm just trying to figure out the correlation between airline travel and exercise. Now, don't get me wrong. When I'm doing an international flight, I'm going to walk around, make sure I get my circulation going so I don't get a blood clot. I get all that. But the need to do specifically a pull-up or a workout because you think as a transportation secretary, you're acting in the best interests of Americans is silly. And this goes back to the whole idea of performative politics. I don't need the Health and Human Services Secretary to be able to do a pull-up. I need a Health and Human Services Secretary to know the value of vaccines. I need a Secretary of Health and Human Services to not undermine the practical guidance of the CDC. I need a Health and Human Services Secretary who understands that since he's not a doctor, since he has zero medical experience, that he will defer to the actual immunologists, the actual epidemiologists, the actual physicians, the actual experts in the field, as opposed to trying to impose his personal political witchcraft in lieu of it. All this within the same week at airports.
I just don't understand how, if we're supposed to go back to the 50s where we're dressing fancy to take a flight, how that then jibes with we're supposed to exercise at the airport. So you want me to wear a fancy outfit, and then you want me to work out in my fancy outfit while I'm waiting for my plane, and then you want me to sit next to somebody all sweaty in my fancy outfit because I just worked out? None of this makes sense.
Hey, Tony, I'm talking across the board, as they say. I want you to go to my Threads feed, and I posted a picture of this Trump administration social media depiction of making America great again. And it's a picture of a white family, clearly from the late 1950s, early 1960s. That runs parallel, Kim, to your point about dressing up and getting on a plane. Because yes, men wore suits and hats in the 1950s and 60s when traveling. And if people haven't noticed, the country is very different today. The seats on a plane in the 1950s were probably twice the size of planes today. There it is. There it is. Make America great again. It looks something straight out of Pleasantville, Iowa, 1959. And if you got the subtle messaging of that being segregated America, then you've been paying attention, because clearly that wasn't a great time in America for everyone. That was pre-Civil Rights Act. That was pre-Voting Rights Act. That was pre-Fair Housing Act. That was pre all the things which actually helped make America greater than it was before. And if you know that about that time in America, then you know how people dressed when they got on the plane. This is about a comprehensive marketing strategy of an America that has been romanticized and glorified, which was not great for everyone, but was specifically an America which ostracized and I would say removed from view specifically. It's one thing to not have rights, but people were not seen. You did not see black and brown people. Oh, we were here in America, but we weren't seen. So when you have that explicit message of make America great again, and you're harking back to the 1950s, you are saying, it's not a dog whistle, it's a bullhorn. You are saying that we want an America of the late 1950s in which there was segregation. And also in the 1950s, that's when men wear fedoras, yes, as we said in the chat, and they wore suits, and they traveled on planes in full regalia, but the seats were twice as large, and airline travel was more of a luxury. It was exclusive to a segment of society. It was not, going back to the whole idea of affordability, it was not available to everyone. And you have airlines now, they're trying to charge you for everything. And although the cost of tickets may be more affordable, travel more broadly is less affordable. And you want to tell people that we need to dress a certain way and carry ourselves in a certain way and exercise a certain way in the airport, when just last administration you're saying that's not the government's job. That's big government. We don't want the government telling us how to live our personal lives. And then when Trump gets in office, hey, it's A-OK. And those are the things which piss me off the most, is because I'm old enough to remember last week. I can remember last month, last year, last administration. I remember when you said that we should not be worried about what's in kids' lunches. Worry about the national debt. Okay, now the national debt doesn't really seem to mean much. And if we look at what's happening with tariffs and how that's negatively impacting Americans' lives here. If you didn't have tariffs, maybe more people would be more inclined to travel. Maybe they could spend a little more money on the apparel that they're wearing to the airport. Not that I would, but they would have at least more money to try it.
I love this, Beth. So it'll be okay then to pinch the flight attendants again?
Incorrect.
No?
They were stewardesses back then. They're not flight attendants. You have to go back to the parlance of the time. You can't give them the respect of a flight attendant. They were stewardesses who served you. I'm hot. They got me hot today. Got me angry. I don't like people. And this is true. I don't like my mother. God bless her. Even though I'm now 56 years old, she's still, I'm never grown to my mother. And that's probably, if you have parents who may be older, you're never grown to your parents. She's always trying to tell me what to do, what to wear, what I should invest in, what I should be mindful of. Like, don't go there tonight. Don't buy a house there. You know, it's not a good neighborhood. It's like, and I usually call my mother by her first name when she pisses me off. I say, Kay, I got this. I got this. And I feel like I'm talking to my mother when we talk about the government saying, hey, put on a suit jacket when you're going to go travel. And I would say, hey, Kay, I got this. I'm a grown ass man. I'm spending $2,500 on the ticket to Korea. If I don't want to do a pull-up, that's my business. If I want to wear t-shirt and sweats, damn it, I'm going to do it. And I don't, and here's the real takeaway. I don't want the federal government wasting the time, energy, or resources trying to tell me that I am less than if I don't travel that way, if I don't wear a fedora, if I don't wear a suit jacket. I am in pretty good shape. I'm pretty sure I could bang out 20 pull-ups. I do at least 30 to 40 push-ups every single morning. But I choose to do that. I don't expect that of anyone else. And I don't want anyone telling me what I need to do. Like, for example, if you have never had to travel with young children, for example, and try to maneuver through an airport in this post 9/11 world, with 3 children who are getting on your last nerve, one might be crying, the other one is hungry, and you're just trying to keep them all in one place. And you're saying that that person needs to dress a certain way to make you, Sean Duffy, feel better or somehow feel that that person is valid because they wouldn't be in pajamas. There's a psychosis there. That's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Instead of trying to do something to make that travel experience or cost better, going back to the issue of affordability. They're charging me for internet. They're charging me for choosing my seat assignment. Do something about that. At least with Pete Buttigieg, he at least took the task of trying to hold airlines accountable as far as refunds and their fees. We don't get that from this administration. We get clothing tips. That's it. And exercise suggestions.
How crazy is it that I can see a world in the coming years where if you're dressed in a suit and or if you're a woman, pantyhose and a nice dress with low heels at the airport, and will show that you're MAGA, right? Whereas everyone else will then be more scrutinized by TSA because of directives from the federal government. I could just see that scenario coming into place where you kind of split the society even more into two halves. The MAGA folks who are nicely dressed, who you can tell by appearance, who get right through, and everybody else.
Here's something else that people haven't thought of. And I know this as a man. Part of the reason why I don't travel in a suit jacket, because one, it's uncomfortable to sit in a suit jacket on a plane, even in first class. And also, if you're not sitting in first class, that becomes a carry-on. And if you're traveling with, let's say, one or two carry-ons, depending on the airlines, what you're allowed, you then have to take that into account and then maybe have to pay for a bag. They're not thinking about that. They're not actually thinking about the consumer, the traveler, how that may inconvenience him or her. It's this performative politics about creating this Pleasantville America, which really never existed. Now, it existed in certain facets, in certain quadrants, for certain groups of people, usually white, usually wealthy. But it didn't exist for the greater majority of Americans. And this America in 2025, love it or loathe it, is vastly different than 1955. And I sure as hell do not ever want this country to go back to 1955. I remember in 1975, my parents weren't allowed to buy a house in Palos Verdes. And if you know Southern California, it's a nice area. But because of racial covenants and the do not sell edicts, that the people living in Palos Verdes, California, would not sell to black people or other people of color. That's what I think of when they talk about make America great again or going back to the 1950s. It's an inescapable truth. It's something that I had to deal with, my parents had to deal with, and I know other African Americans had to deal with. I can't speak for everyone, but I can speak for my personal journey, my family's journey. So I don't want to go back. I don't give a damn what the president says. If America is going to be great, it's going to be great in its present iteration, in its present constitution, and its present breakdown of different religions and ethnicities and nationalities. You're not going to make America a country which no longer accepts immigrants. That's just not ever going to happen. Now, I know what the president is trying to do. I know what the Trump administration is trying to do, but he will never be successful in that endeavor, big picture. We are a nation of immigrants. That's not ever going to change. Now, you can put maximums and quotas and ever, but you can't have it both ways. You can't say that we're the shining city on the hill. We're the beacon of light for around the world. Oh, but don't come here. We're the greatest country and this greatest democratic experiment the world's ever seen. But don't come here. Mm-hmm. We are the most wealthy country in the nation. But don't come here. We can wag our finger at Russia and China and other parts of the world as far as human rights. But don't come here. We want to be the example, but we don't want in any way for people to come here. can't have it both ways. We'll never have it both ways.
I would argue, who would want to come here? I mean, have you seen the latest requirements for foreign tourists looking to even visit the United States? We've got changes coming, Customs and Border Protection moving to add social media as mandatory data element for electronic system and travel authorization application. So this new rule means that visitors would be asked to provide social media accounts and telephone numbers used in the last 5 years, as well as email addresses in the last 10 years. They want to scan your email for the last 10 years. They want to scan your social media accounts for the last 5 years to what? Look to see whether you said anything bad about Trump?
Yes.
I mean, I
Yes.
don't know. Is that what they're looking for? Are they looking for the word bomb? What are they looking for?
They're looking to exclude you in the way that the Trump administration wanted to limit the number of foreign students who could attend colleges and universities around the country, be it Harvard, Princeton, Ivy League, what have you. It's much more of that. It's a way of filtering out under the pretense and pretext of nationalism, basically, and patriotism, and limiting the amount of black and brown people who are coming to this country. Yes, that's what it's all about. And what's really strange is, going back to the deteriorating mind of this president, Kip, did you see the clip? And this was also part of the Dasha Burns Politico interview. That's what I'm saying. You got to go see it. It's an hour of insanity. If you got time, you got to see it. It's better than anything on reality television. I'm sure of it because my wife watches reality television and it doesn't compare. And I posted it on my Threads account at Mr. Mo Kelly. And it goes into how Trump, in his insanity, my word, now thinks that Sweden, and he contradicts himself, because on a campaign trail, he would say, why is it we can't get more immigrants from Norway and Sweden? Well, check out what he now has to say about Sweden, of all places. Check it out.
So Sweden was known as the safest country in Europe, one of the safest countries in the world. Now it's known as a very unsafe, pretty unsafe country. It's not even believable. It's a whole different country, Sweden.
And Sweden most recently joined NATO. One of the things that the national security strategy says is that the U.S. should work toward ending the perception and preventing the reality of NATO as a perpetually expanding alliance. Are there countries in NATO that you think shouldn't be in the alliance?
Well,
Sweden,
there
for
are
example?
countries that are difficult for NATO. Not that they shouldn't be. I think it's good to have them. Turkey's an example. Erdogan, he's a friend of mine. Whenever they have a problem with Erdogan, they ask me to call because they can't speak to him. He's a tough cookie. I actually like him a lot. I think actually, look, he's built a strong country, strong military, but they have a hard time dealing with him, and they ask me to call him. And I do call him, and I always work it out with him. He and I work it out really quickly. We had some people that he released that were taken and going through years and years of court cases and everything else. And I said, you got to release him. And he did. He is, very different than a lot of the other leaders. But they have a hard time with him. But, they shouldn't really have a hard time with
Should
him.
NATO stop accepting new members? Should NATO...
Okay, so there are two things there. First, all of a sudden now Sweden is a problematic country, which is laughable. They have 1/5 the murder rate of the United States. That's the first thing. And also you see Trump once again, who wrongly believes that foreign policy is done by friendship. I know so-and-so, or I get along well with so-and-so. That's not foreign policy. And he believes that likability somehow connects to safety, somehow connects to commerce, somehow connects to foreign policy doctrine as far as NATO and security. It has nothing to do with whether he believes that they like each other. That's a fallacy in and of itself. No, they present themselves as likable so they can manipulate you, but that's a whole different conversation. But my point is that this president has no idea, going back to who's running the country, he doesn't know what he says from day to day.
Yeah.
Yesterday he said one thing, today you'll be a direct contradiction, be it about the video of the boats, be it about affordability is a Democratic scam, even though he campaigned on affordability using that word time and time again. Those are just two of the examples. But there's so many ways that I can take this. It's just that when we talk about travel and how we're viewed around the world, all these things fit together where they have to look at Trump and say, not only is that man crazy, but the United States, big picture to wrap it up, is more unstable than ever because of who leads us. That is, it probably sends a very distressing message around the world. Sweden? Unsafe? What's next? Scandinavia? Denmark? I mean, anyhow.
Speaking of travel, let's end the show with this story that is an eye-popping story about this Royal Caribbean cruise passenger who died sadly after being served at least 33 drinks. That's according to a lawsuit. The Los Angeles County Medical Examiner ruling the death a homicide, saying Michael Virgil died from the combined effects of mechanical asphyxia, which is when force or an object blocks breathing, obesity, an enlarged heart, and alcohol intoxication. This guy had a lot of issues.
Let me just give you some behind the scenes. I have been on 7 or 8 cruises. My wife and I, we love to cruise. We try to hit a different continent each time we cruise. I say that to say we're pretty experienced when it comes to the cruise process, be it Carnival, Royal Caribbean, what have you. And all these cruise lines, they sell you these unlimited drink packages where you spend, let's say, $800 for a 7-day cruise. You can drink all you want. The fine print is they're only supposed to sell you up to 15 drinks, provide you. That's the fine print. That's the first point.
Per day?
Per day.
Okay.
Per day. Up to 15. And also, I can't prove this. I've long believed that the drinks were watered down. I mention that because you take someone out to a bar anywhere, it is not physically possible to consume 33 drinks and not pass out or die on the spot.
Alcohol poisoning, right? I mean,
correct.
You would think that that's dangerous. Yeah.
But even though the drinks may be watered down, they still have alcohol content. Mm-hmm. What happens though on cruise ships, they don't want you to be sloshy drunk because it becomes a safety issue for yourself and other passengers. That's why the whole idea of consuming 33 drinks, I believe it, but they weren't full alcohol. That's the first part. The second part is if and when you get into a situation on a cruise ship, since it's a safety issue, they'll take you down to the brig. And I just know because last time I went on a cruise, a member of our party, they got into a little bit of an issue. And so they take you down and they'll monitor you for a certain time. And if need be, they will offer you a sedative if need be. This is what happened in this situation. They gave him a sedative on top of the 33 drinks, even though they were watered down. So he had a high alcohol content in his body, high BAC. That combined with the sedative obviously led to his death. I'm not a doctor, I'm not an ME, but it's reasonable.
They also pepper sprayed the guy.
Well, that too. Yeah. And there's video floating around of him verbally accosting and attacking other people. They had to physically subdue him, which probably led to the sedative. But I don't understand why they would give him a sedative when it was evident to everyone that he was highly intoxicated. And you don't have to be a doctor or an ME to know that if you apply a sedative to someone who is already intoxicated, there's a likelihood of their heart stopping or stopping breathing.
This guy was 35. The cruise was from LA to Ensenada, Mexico. And apparently the guy, as you say, was served more than 33 drinks. The man became agitated, got lost while trying to find his room, was freaking out. So the crew members come, they tackle him. The allegations is they stood on him with their full weight. and subjected him to prolonged prone restraint, compressed his back and torso, impaired his breathing, according to the law. This is all according to the lawsuit. And then at the captain's request, the crew members administered a sedative, as you said, and sprayed him with pepper spray, which, according to the lawsuit, says this led to respiratory failure, cardiac arrest, and his death. So, and the LA County medical examiner has ruled it a homicide. Meanwhile, the fiance is now suing, saying it's the fault of the cruise line for serving this man 33 drinks. Don't they have the way of keeping track? Don't you have to hand them your cruise card or whatever, and they scan it before they give you a drink?
Yes, they do. And that's how they know whether you, what drink package that you have, how many drinks that you have gotten for that calendar day on the cruise, and so forth. They can tell you what you got, which bar on the ship. And since you said that it was to Ensenada, I've been on that cruise on both Carnival and Royal Caribbean. So I know that cruise itinerary, and there's usually a day at sea. So people are just on the ship just drinking for the most part.
Sure.
But there's an unwritten rule. I think it's in the fine print where they can't give you more than 15. Yeah. And if they were in violation of their own policies, there's no telling how much money they're going to be found liable for as far as punitive and damages.
Yeah, it's the craziest thing. I can't believe anyone could consume that many drinks, but you know,
I don't think I could have 33 drinks of water. I mean, because you're talking about one evening.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he started drinking it at 2 p.m. and this was 11 o'clock at night. I don't know, but I'm just saying 33 drinks of anything. And he's not a small guy, but still, you're just talking about the limits of the human body to ingest that much liquid.
35-year-old guy. Yeah.
Not anymore.
No, I think it's going to be a huge payout.
Yes.
Absolutely. We have some people to thank, including Richard Delamater, who throws in a couple saying, I lost my rear end at the Grayton Casino last night. Oh, no.
Oh, sorry, Richard, but thank you.
Hopefully you had fun while you were losing. Luis with 10. Thank you, Luis. He says, Australia, you are a bunch of liberal communists. Here in America, it's our right to wreck our children's mental health with social media. Hashtag trust Americans to make good choices. Yours, Magali. That is in reference to Australia implementing this total ban on social media for anyone under the age of 16. And that kicks in Australia starting today.
I don't hate that. No. I don't hate it.
You have teenagers at your house?
Not anymore, thank goodness. But as far as they're put it this way, there used to be. Let me just put this in a crass way. Just being a former boy, when I was growing up, and I think Tony can speak to this. The only way that you could find any type of pornography is if Dad had a Playboy magazine.
God, yeah. It's either Dad's stash or you find it like on the freeway underpass.
Right. Like, now, all you need to do is have a phone and you can find everything that a person has ever conceived of. Thanks to the internet and social media, there are no guardrails. And although I understand the idea of freedom and people should be allowed to do what they want, or a parent's right to raise their children as they see fit, I don't think anyone can deny the negative impact of social media on a developing child's mind.
The problem
so I don't hate it.
I'd say the problem is kids are way more tech savvy than the adults, and the kids are already defeating the age check with a picture of a dog.
It's not hard to get around. And you know what? And most of the pornographic sites, don't ask me how I know this. I've been told this. Most of the pornographic sites, all you need to do is click a button saying, yes, I'm 18. So there's really no partition keeping kids from anything out there.
We have a house iPad, and we have this timer. So you can set it for, you can play Roblox for, 45 minutes, 1 hour, whatever the time frame is. And after that, you maybe can practice your French on Duolingo or whatever else, and then I need the iPad back. Well, we thought that this was all working out, but it turns out my 11-year-old son has found a workaround, and he managed to get back into the settings and turn off the timer, which we thought was impossible. They're smart. They
know how to jailbreak these computers that they're getting at school. Look, and I'm someone who used to run my computer lab in high school. I've always been technologically savvy for my Gen X generation. But these kids are light years ahead of us, the stuff that they can do, because it has been a part of their life at every point, at every level of education. You know, my nephew had a phone. Granted, it was limited, but he had a phone at like 7 years old.
But connectivity, just one person figures it out, and then that chain, and everyone gets it real fast. So
They almost take it as a challenge. Wes is warm, is different than yesterday when Wes was cold. Wes is back in Florida. Thanks for the $5, Wes. We appreciate you. We appreciate everyone who contributes to keep this show going, allows us to get Mr. Mo Kelly on the air, allows us to talk politics and bring you the news and do all the things that you expect of us and want from us. So thank you so much for contributing to this show. Please find our Patreon and PayPal links at themarkthompsonshow.com. Got to put the in there. Otherwise, you get the Christian ventriloquist. I'm not making that up. There's a Mark Thompson show that's not the Mark Thompson show. Totally different thing. So themarkthompsonshow.com gets you to the Patreon link, the PayPal link. Thank you for the super chats and super stickers here on YouTube. Please click like, please subscribe, and all that.
Kim, thank you very much for today's show.
Thank you, Mr. Mo
Tony,
Kelly.
thank you.
Yeah, I get to see you tomorrow.
I'll be back tomorrow. Fabulous Thursday. Bye-bye.
David Katz coming in tomorrow. It's going to be a good show. Bye-bye.